So in the last neuroanatomy video, we talked about the brain and the basic overview of the human brain. And the two nervous system, the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system, CNS and PNS. So today we're going to go more in depth about the side view of the human brain, and I'm going to show you some pictures. So let's get started. So we're going to continue here as we did from last time. And I'm going to finish this part off by introducing a new part here, which most of you or some of you may know as the olfactory bulb. And the olfactory bulb is in charge of smell, so when you smell something, that's work of the olfactory bulb, part of the human brain, which is located right around here below the frontal lobe. So the frontal lobe is right here and the olfactory bulb is right here, so that's where the olfactory bulb is located, and it's for smell, as I said. And so the three main parts of the brain is the frontal lobe area, which is around here. The cerebral cortex includes this area of the brain, and then the bottom part of the brain is right here. And then the cerebellum is down here, which is the cerebellum. I'm going to make an entire video just on the cerebellum because the anatomy of the cerebellum is extremely complex, so this requires an entire other video. So we're going to move on to a more organized area. And so over here we're in lateral view. So this is just lateral view. Over here we're going to talk about some medial view because I want to get into the pituitary gland. I want to get into the brain stem, the midbrain, the ventricles, etc. So we're going to start with the brain stem. Now below your brain, almost, it's like near your neck, almost go down from your neck. Near the neck, around there, like below your brain, you have the brainstem. The brainstem extends down from the brain, so it extends down from the brain. Pretty important part of the brainstem, and one of the parts of the brainstem, you have this area right here near the brainstem. Around this area, it should be around here, but around this area you have the pituitary gland, which many of you might have heard of. It's a famous area. Pituitary gland is located right here. And we're going to go over the meanings in a second, but I just want to get down to the parts of the brain in medial view. We know this is just the cerebellum. We've talked about this. Cerebellum is right here, the brainstem is there, pituitary gland is right here. Over here, we have the ventricles. And then as a part of the brainstem, right here is an area of the brainstem right around here, is which we call the pons area. It's a section of the brainstem. So the brainstem it's pretty big. Like the brainstem, this doesn't cover the entire brainstem. Look right over here. So in medial view, we're looking at the inside of the brain as well as like the brainstem comes down. So in lateral view, we only look at the outside of the brain, but here we're looking at the inside. So if we're looking at lateral view, we get like the lobes and stuff like this would be the frontal lobe. And then we'd have the occipital lobe, etc. in the back. But here we're looking at the inside. We're looking at the brainstem. We're looking at the different parts inside the brain. And yeah, basically, that's what we're looking at in the medial view of the brain. So moving on, we have the thalamus right here. And the thalamus, it should be extremely noticeable because the thalamus is right in the middle of the medial view part of the brain. So basically, with the thalamus, again, is in the middle of the brain, so it's pretty easy to see. When someone looks at the brainstem, they might not know what it is. So the thalamus, you should always remember, is like when you go into medial view, you should see that the thalamus is in the middle, the brainstem is extending down from it. All right. So moving on, the brainstem, the entire area right here, we have the pons, part of the brainstem. We also have the medulla area, which is right over here. That's again another part of the brainstem. So as I said, the pons is a part of the brainstem. Well, just like that, the medulla is also a part of the brainstem. So we've gone over multiple parts of the brain. So, and also another referencing is the brainstem connects the brain to the spinal cord. So that's why the spinal cord is so important. Is because if the spinal cord gets damaged, the brain also gets damaged in one way or another. And the medulla, one of the main functions of the medulla is regulating cardiovascular systems. So the cardiovascular system is the heart, etc. So the medulla is extremely important in that way as well. In a way, the medulla also has a role in the respiratory system and breathing, but it's more focused on the respiratory area of the body. So, and the brainstem connects the two. The thalamus we already went over. Now, another area of the brain, when we look at the brain, is the midbrain, which is located right here. Call that the midbrain, which is on the lateral view. It's somewhere around here, which is why they call it the midbrain. Midbrain. And the midbrain is important because it's close to the middle of the center of the brain almost. So the midbrain is again another interior part of the brain. And again, if the interior gets damaged, it's not going to be good for your body, since the brain is a command center of the body almost. And let's move on to the function of the pituitary gland. Now, the pituitary gland it's pretty small. The gland is pretty small, and if this pituitary gland does not function properly, it can affect everything, like almost everything in the body. It can affect your vision, it can affect your breathing, it can affect your walking, it can affect your physical appearance, it can affect a lot of things. So the pituitary gland is one of the most important organs in the body, in the human body, which is why it's extremely important to the body. Now, moving on to the ventricles. Now, the ventricles are again part of the thalamus area, but the ventricles produce something called cerebrospinal fluid, and they produce this fluid and they transfer it around. We're going to get more in depth about this in the upcoming videos, but that's basically what the ventricles do. That's the main thing they do, is the production of that. And yeah, it's basically what we're going to be going over. And the medulla, as we talked about, section of the brainstem. Now we're going to go over some of the midbrain and some of the areas. So the midbrain is It's mainly like motor skills that we talked about in some of the frontal lobe and like the lobes area. Um, when you move your eyes, you blink, etc. That's also work by the midbrain. So that's mainly what the midbrain does. Also, it plays a role in hearing. So that's also a pretty important part of the brain. And lastly, if the midbrain is damaged, you might get troubles with vision and hearing. Memory loss can occur. And it's mainly because the midbrain regulates body function. It's a pretty important part of the body. Yeah, so that's the interior parts of the brain, the brainstem, the pituitary gland, etc. Hopefully this video is helpful. And yeah, that's Introduction Neuroanatomy, Part 2.